please remember to leave a like, a comment, share the video about, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Thank you. Hello everyone, welcome back to a Megon 2 Electric Boogaloo. Today we're going to be doing another response video to somebody we've covered before in a video titled The Flawless Logic Used. In that video, the person made a whole lot of excuses for why they couldn't do something. And the reason why is because they are plus sized. They are super morbidly obese, body positive, fat acceptance, attempting to normalize fatness, and all the other stuff that involves advocating for something I cannot agree with. Since then, they've gone from strength to strength. In fact, what drew my attention back to their account was that they had put on their TikTok, and it was shared to Twitter very recently, a video of them linking up with Dove. In the comments to that, many people were very much, "You go girl, thank you sister for empowering." There are some points in the video itself worth looking at, and perhaps we'll quickly look at that before we go to what drew my attention fully. But I do want to state, rather interestingly, this video didn't blow up on their account at all. In fact, comparative to views they get, no different to anything else they've ever done. That's because this video came out in mid-September, meaning that by the time it was shared to Twitter a month and a half later, they've been very active on their TikTok, replying to people in the comments as you often do, but also doing their own little body positive content within their echo chamber of, "Look at me everyone, on my own all the time, look at me," while I champion normalizing and destigmatizing the world of all the problems that need to be destigmatized. Unstigmatized? Something-matized.
I'm partnering with Dove to talk about underarm stigma.
Now already I disagree with this being a stigma. It's not a stigma, it's that many people disagree with women having underarm hair, and there are many who agree with it. Some don't like it because they think it's disgusting. Some do like it because it's disgusting. Some don't like it because it doesn't look good on a woman. Others like it because they think it looks good on a woman. Some think they can use it as a part of an identity hook. Others would think perhaps your identity needs a stronger foundation than armpit hair. Where you, the individual who's linked up with Dove, think that this is a stigma is entirely based on a beauty standard that you disagree with.
Even though I haven't shaved my armpits in 10 years, I sometimes still get self-conscious showing my underarms. When I'm feeling the urge to shrink myself and hide parts of my body, I stretch my arms out wide and remind myself to be free in my body.
I don't really understand how much freedom there is, but I can certainly applaud the confidence to simply push through your own hang-ups. And by my comment of freedom, I'm referring to your size because you in other videos have mentioned normalizing wheelchair access for those who are fully abled but want to pretend to be anything but.
Dove is reminding us all to stretch our arms out and live life to the fullest with their latest Subway campaign. Did you know that 50% of people say that they've judged themselves because of their underarms?
The scientific term for that is negativity bias, and it usually stems from one's fear of intimacy, that we judge ourselves so harshly, allow our hang-ups to control us. This usually falls under the umbrella term of self-criticism. There are many different types. For example, failure, can never do anything right, you're not good enough, you should have done better on a test. And effects of such self-criticism usually center around low self-esteem, feeling worthless, feeling guilty, self-harm, perfectionism, lack of self-motivation, social anxiety, and body image issues. I don't know where you got your 50% from, so one of my criticisms mostly from this video is that you've asserted something and not provided a source to back it up. But that is quite typical of the TikToks.
Next time you catch those thoughts creeping in, just stretch out your arms and remember that underarm stigmas are just that, stigmas, and not a reflection of who you are.
Actually, they are a part of your identity, and if you're stretching your arms out, you're trying to draw attention to them. Therefore, it is very much a part of who you are. I'm being pedantic, but I am right. You're interpreting this as some kind of philosophical moment situation type deal, but the reality is you are making it a focal part of your identity, and you're trying to drill that point home by hooking up with Dove. Well, I can't imagine it did that well for you. And many in your comments said they were allergic to Dove, so I guess it's not all a win, really, is it? The videos that drew my attention and caught my eye though were the more recent ones, talking about what's going on in a part of the world I can't really speak on too much. But it was how you spoke about what those social media influencers should do with their platform that I found quite fascinating.
I've been spending a lot of time thinking about why people choose to not speak out during times of that we are witnessing any form of like systemic oppression.
This is a remarkably simple thing to answer, because many choose not to. Many have vastly more important things within their life to focus their energies on. And I know that's selfish, but that's humanity for you. If you didn't know it already, I'm quite impressed, since you're speaking about oppression and have done multiple times in previous videos.
And something that I've heard some people say is obviously like, it's not my fault, right? It's not my fault that I was born in America. It's not my fault that my taxes go to the IDF. It's not my fault that I was born white, or that I was born this, or that I was born that, right? These are things that we hear people say.
I'm going to be pedantic and say what people. I'm also going to ask, when you say IDF, do you mean the Israel Defense Fund? Because there are many people who are left-leaning, centrist and right-leaning who disagree with it fundamentally. And there are many who are left-leaning, centrist and right-leaning who agree with it. As you're in New York, I think I know which side you sit on. The discussion about it's not your fault, the colour of your skin that you were born with, 100% correct. Yet many who sit on a particular side like to blame regardless, and even say it's still your fault because you were born with it, which there's a word for, but they never like to hear it.
And I want to offer something that is so basic, but I think people might forget, which is that there's a difference between fault and responsibility. So for sure, it's not our fault that we were born white. Totally. It's not our fault that we live in the United States, or that we were born in the United States, and that our taxes are funding the IDF.
I think we all know a but is coming, especially as you've said responsibility, because you believe people not is because of an absolute, which is a false equivalence, by the way, and that everyone who falls under the brackets of what you've just already set parameters have a responsibility to advocate, to listen, to support, to make change. Clearly you don't know the politics game, because they're never going to change. No joke. Politicians are self-serving, if you didn't know that already. You live in New York, seriously. Being born white does not mean you have a responsibility to do anything. It really doesn't. Nor is there any blame to lay at those who are born in the United States of America. But please do tell me what the but is when you get to it.
It's not your fault that you would be incarcerated, or at least taken to court. I don't really know how like tax fraud works, but like, it's not your fault that our taxes go to where we go, because for most of us who are not Congress people, we are not the ones who have a say ultimately over that kind of stuff.
Nor do Congress though, really, do they? I was always led to believe Congress dealt with domestic issues and the president's office dealt with international stuff. And then whenever a new president was elected, they invariably vetoed everything from the previous president if they were of a differing party. I could be wrong though, but that's often how I'd learnt about this through shows like West Wing. Also, of course, the oikari are nothing like Congress. Congress is full of snakes who will virtue signal to make it seem like they're going to help you. They won't the moment they realize it makes them no money. They're more interested in insider trading and then trying to find a way to excuse it or ban it after they've made countless millions from it. Know anyone that's done that? There's at least one in Congress that has, and they've been there far too long.
But it is our responsibility, because if we didn't take responsibility for that, then that is what makes a person complicit. And so, yeah, I think that if you are struggling because you feel that you are not at fault for the ongoing genocide, the 80 years long genocide that the people of Palestine have been facing, I want to suggest considering that while no, it's not your fault, it could be your responsibility to try and stop it. So if it's not been clear from my platform, Free Palestine, and I will always fight for the liberation of any oppressed group, because we all deserve to be free.
This issue is vastly more complicated than simply saying Free Palestine. It really is. It is not the Palestinian people that many take issue with. Of course, on both sides, atrocities have been happening. We cannot excuse that. Of course not. It is Hamas that many take great issue with. Who are those paragliders again? Do you really believe because someone's white they have a responsibility? You say you stand up to all oppressors and you'll fight against oppressors. You won't fight anything. You will make your crummy little TikToks and espouse your belief system, not realizing how absolutely vapid you are. This is a vastly more complicated issue that is unlikely to end at any point soon. This was one of the two videos that drew my attention. The second video ties into this though.
I've seen a lot of posts going around talking about how it's okay to not use your social media or your platform to talk about what is going on in Palestine right now.
Disclaimer, this is 100% true. You should not feel like you are obligated to use your platform to speak on this if you do not want to. For whatever reason, whether it be selfless or selfish depending on interpretation. I don't want to at all if I can avoid it. On the politics streams I do with Trups, it gets brought up and I let Trups do the talking on it because he has a view and he'll stick to it. I don't, because my views usually center around my inability to comprehend the vast complexity concerning religion and that area of the world, because I don't care for religion. I cannot understand something I do not care for, or how it can drive people so far one way. When it comes to the human aspect, I take issue with it because people are trying to take very odd sides, but skirting the problem and refusing to acknowledge the problem. But I still won't speak on it if I can avoid it.
And I totally agree. Nobody is required to post about any social justice issue, let alone every social justice issue. Nobody has to post on social media at all. It's not required that we all share into the void on our screens every thought that we have all day, every day online.
I have an issue when it comes to hearing the term social justice because a lot of that has become watered down over the years. And when it comes to advocating for social justice in this, I don't really know what you're going to accomplish. This is one of those times where we have to sit back and watch the politicians attempt to pull their thumbs out of their rectums only to actually be seen to look like they're going to do something and then do nothing in the process.
That being said, if your For You page looks anything like mine, you know that we are being live screened a genocide right now, if you are personally able to recognize what is happening as genocide.
I do recognise what has happened as what can be seen to be a very one-sided affair after somebody did something they should not have done, after somebody did something horrendous and the other side acted in accordance to their beliefs that that act of aggression was enough of a reason for them to go all out. I do not agree with going all out, of course not, I'm English. We try and approach things proportionate, which is typically how bigger governments are supposed to behave. But again, this is not how our beliefs align with other countries' beliefs. The word you're using that I've had to blur out, genocide, is a tricky word to use.
Not only are Palestinians using the tool of social media to share the reality of what is going on in Gaza right now, but they are also using social media to ask us for help. What is being asked of us is to take action. So while of course you do not have to post on social media, it is our duty, it is our responsibility to listen to what they are saying, particularly as people who claim to care about social justice.
You see why this is tricky? I'm desperately trying not to address part of it because I know how complicated it is. But then you reference social justice and I want to talk about that. Because what can you actually impact through your social justice by leaning on your politicians who in the wider, grander scheme of things, and optics is the game they play, will not do anything to stand against Israel and they will not do anything to help Palestine. Hamas is the real problem, the real enemy. 100% they are. Yet we've seen people at protests in my country and in yours waving flags supporting them. And that is fascinating. The blind ignorance of the lemming.
And that can look like any number of things apart from posting online. You can call your representatives and advocate for a ceasefire. You can donate. You can support or go to direct action, which in itself has an entire ecosystem of ways to support. You can show up to protests, but you could also be jail support. You can go and bring masks and water and make sure the people who are protesting have their needs met.
This is quite fascinating really because while there are a number of people within Congress who do not support Israel in this, and I've seen them on Twitter, I've seen it. Your representatives, yes. Biden vehemently supports Israel. In my country, there are some voices that do not agree 100%, but they also vehemently support Israel in this because their problem isn't the Palestinian people, although they will not condemn it because they know they'll be called anti-Semitic. No, and that's optics for you. No, they are against Palestine because of Hamas. So we can advocate the politicians all we like, but the top dog in both our respective countries is against what you believe. And I certainly won't help those at the protests. I've seen some carrying Al-Qaeda flags. I'd rather not, thank you.
Even just having conversations with people in your life about Palestine, about the history of the region and the ongoing genocide is important. But what worries me about these posts regarding protecting your mental health is that I don't want us to be lulled into complacency under the guise of capacity, because of course we all have different capacities, but I think using mental health as a way out is something that has bit us in the past.
The fascinating thing about this statement is you are trying to find a way to justify criticizing those who cannot speak on an issue they do not want to speak on for reasons that you do not believe are valid. But you simultaneously say, I understand, yet you don't. It is subjective, means assessed, I fully understand that. However, this issue goes back as far as 1922 with the Balfour Declaration, or 1948 with the Israeli Declaration of Independence that sparked the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. This will persist because it is so different from social justice. This is so vastly different. This is faith. This is holy. This cannot be changed with politics. And it certainly can't be from two nations that were involved in the creation. You have one more statement of interest, and the video goes on for a lot longer, but I don't want to waste too much of everyone's time. I just want to demonstrate how one has to run a certain level of mental gymnastics to drive certain points home. Hopefully you understand.
Honoring your capacity is an important part of the longevity of any social justice movement, because it is the way in which we make these movements sustainable, as long as you do not use that as an excuse to check out.